Chapter 20. Robert and Frank. It was still daylight when Ida woke up. She guessed it was early afternoon, definitely past dinner time. She pushed herself up to sitting and ran her fingers through the muddle of clothes and papers on the bed. If the thief knew where she'd hidden the rings, why hadn't he gone straight there? Had he scattered Mum's things for a lark? If he had, Ida didn't think she could ever forgive him, and she certainly didn't want to give him a chance like Uncle Arthur was going to. He'd stolen Mum's jewellery, for heaven's sake. That made him a jewel thief. He could even hang for that. Ida shivered at the thought. She gathered everything on the bed together in a pile, refolded the clothes, and flattened out the bits of paper. She'd barely looked at it the other day, but the brown envelope with her and Bonnie's birth certificates inside was ripped open. It hadn't been before. On the day the bailiffs came, there were 2 big pieces of paper inside. Today she pulled out just one long sheet. Ida Mary Barnes, born 19th December 1922, to Mary Elizabeth Barnes and Thomas Albert Barnes. She sifted through the other papers on the bed because maybe when the thief, or elf, found out it wasn't money inside the envelope, he'd just left it strewn with the other papers. But the only other piece of paper like it was Mum and Dad's marriage certificate. She couldn't find Bonnie's birth certificate at all. Why would Alf or anyone want Bonnie's birth certificate? That didn't make any sense. Well, she supposed the orphanage would need it, but they'd have sent someone like the bailiffs, who wouldn't have run away when Ida came home. Bonnie's missing certificate unsettled Ida. It gave her a queasy feeling in the pit of her stomach that all was not as it should be. She picked up the brass bed knob. It was cold and heavy. What use was it? She pushed it back onto the knobless post. When it turned, she felt something dislodge, then rattle inside. Her heart beat a bit faster. She unscrewed it again. And yes, the little velvet ring box was still there. It was tricky to get out. She could only just work her finger into the gap between the box and the bed knob. But when she did, the 2 golden rings were still inside the box. Alf wasn't a jewel thief after all. She was so happy she could have stood on the lav roof, stretched out her arms, sprouted feathers and flown all the way down the West Street. Now that horrible guilt of her letting someone steal Mum's rings had gone, she could think clearly. And she remembered. Of course Alf wasn't a jewel thief. He'd gone to Southampton to work on the boats. He'd come to say goodbye, hadn't he, just before Bonnie was taken? It was nonsense what Mr. Rogers said about Alf and her, but she was glad he wasn't going to get hanged for thieving. Oh no, she also remembered how mean she'd been to Brian. They were thieves, it was true, but they weren't jewel thieves, so she should have been more understanding. They'd been nothing but kind to her. And she'd been horrible. Oh, why was she so uppity about them trying to live? They stole because they had to. Would she have to resort to that? She was really hungry. It didn't make it right, but if there was no other way... If she went now, she might get to the Lily before dark. She put Mum's ring safely in the button-up pocket in the lining of her mac, left the bedroom tidy and the window shut. With a big hope in her heart that the girls would forgive her, she set out. Ida was nervous about trespassing across the allotments, so she took the shortcut through Dahlia Road. A lady in her slippers, wearing a pinny under her coat, was sweeping her front path. She didn't speak to Ida. The convenient little shortcut was like a tunnel cut into the middle of the terrace of houses. It was handy, but even in daytime, being enclosed, it meant that Ida could barely see. She pulled the collar up on her too small coat and focused on the daylight in West Street at the other end. She started running and had hardly gone anywhere at all when she tripped over a soft, lumpy thing and landed with a bump on the concrete path. The lump moaned. Ida's knee stung, and a smaller, fluffier lump that she also appeared to have landed on yelped. She scrambled up, checking her pocket for her Mum's rings and the knees of her stocking for holes. In the semi-darkness of the Dahlia Road shortcut, a ghostly image of a face and 2 very pale blue eyes stared up at her. Ida screamed in surprise more than terror. "What are you doing down there?" "I ain't doing nothing," said the ghostly face, and from somewhere very nearby a dog growled. "What are you doing, not looking where you're going?" As Ida's eyes got used to the dim light, she made out a boy huddled against the wall and a small, scruffy dog on guard next to him. Ida knew this boy. He was the smart boy leading the line of orphans from the church weeks and weeks ago. The boy so fair he was practically white. In the dark alley, he glowed like a ghost. "I didn't see you down there. Well, not until—" "What are you doing?" "Hiding. What do you think?" "Who from?" If anyone needed to hide from Mrs. Buller, Ida didn't think it would have been him. "Oh, and horrible men. Something real funny going on up at that place." Ida went goose-pimply at the mention of funny business up at the orphanage. "What sort of funny?" "They've got my sister." Ida squatted beside the boy. The little dog growled, but when she gave him her hand to smell, he licked it and nuzzled her to stroke him. "I saw you going to church," she said to the boy. "You didn't look like you needed to hide from her." "I know, but it was like she was fattening me up for something. I know that now. I liked it at first. I'd share me food with Aggie, but then last week she overheard 'em talking, and her and that man in black what takes the dead ones away. My name's Robert Perkins, and I ain't an orphan. I've got a mum somewhere. It wasn't her fault she had to give me up." Ida felt queer inside. There was only one man in Netterfield who took dead people away. "You see, he wasn't just coming to take the dead ones away, he wanted the live ones too. He wanted me. Aggie said it had something to do with me hair. Sometimes she just knows things. She says I'm special, but I tries to forget about it, you see. I don't look in the mirror much." "What does Aggie know?" asked Ida. "The missus thinks she's stupid, but she ain't. Aggie made me go. She said they'd changed their minds about me being special, so I was for it if I didn't scarp her. She was the only one who knew I didn't really want to be special in the first place. And I don't want a new mum and dad. I want the mum I got." Ida looked at the boy's hair. It wasn't almost white. It was white, like an old man's. It was also the sort of hair that wouldn't lie flat no matter how much spit you used, so it made a fluffy halo round his head. It glowed and made him look really angelic, like Bonnie. She tried to make sense of Uncle Arthur being at the orphanage. Was he taking Bonnie away like she'd tried to? Or was he doing it behind her back because Ida had said no to him looking after her? Or was he doing something a lot more sinister, like Baby had suggested? She tried to shake the thought away. How could he be? No one would ever think anything bad of him, in spite of the messages the girls had painted all over town, would they? Everyone looked up to Uncle Arthur in Netterfield. Robert Perkins shivered and clung on to the little dog curled up peacefully beside him. "I don't like Ovaltine, so I tipped it away." Ovaltine? The word sent a shiver down Ida's spine. She hadn't had Ovaltine in ages and ages, and then they'd had some in the Lily that last evening. They'd stolen it, of course they had. But where had they stolen it from? "You know, to help you go to sleep." Robert grabbed Ida's arm. "I don't want to disappear." "Why would you disappear?" "I told you, me hair. But in the end, they didn't want me to be special. Turns out I'm too blonde. They said I was useful, but still a freak. Same as what that man that took Mum said. Then the missus give me the birch like it was my fault." Robert held his palms up to the light pouring from the West Street into the other end of the Dahlia Road shortcut. They were striped with angry red marks. "Still hurts," he said, curling his fingers over the scars, then wrapped his arm round the little dog. "It's all right, Frank. We're safe now." Ida thought about Bonnie's hair, so beautiful and curly and long that Mum never had the heart to cut it. Beautiful, curly, long, fair hair, yellow like gold, Mum used to say. And it wasn't just me. They did it to the other kids that got fair air. He told them that they were going to get new mums and dads and live in a place where it's always Christmas. They got really excited about that, and then you'd never see him again. Ida grabbed the boy's arm. Was there a girl called Bonnie? She's my sister. They took her a few days ago. She's only 8. I'm 10, I think. Bonnie, a new one with lots of fair curls. Oh, they keep her in the missus's room, feed her from the missus's special cupboards. They got a special plan for her now, they said. But was she still there when you escaped? Ida's grip tightened on Robert's arm. Ow, that hurts! He shook her hand away. But was she? The thought of Bonnie being taken away so they'd never be together again was like having her arm ripped off. Dunno, perhaps, said Robert. Ida took a big breath to stop her innards escaping in panic at the possibility that Bonnie was already lost to her. Robert squeezed the little dog to his side and snuggled down into his fur. Ida wondered, was his mum panicking about him? She felt really sorry for this strange ghost boy whose mum gave him up because he was freakish. She had never seen anyone so pale before. He was almost strange enough to go in the circus with the bearded ladies. Didn't you want to go to a new mum and dad? I told you, I've already got a mum, and I'm going to find her. If something was really happening to the children, Ida didn't have time to sit around feeling sorry, or even to say sorry to Brian and the other girls. Who knew where Bonnie could be now? She was sure Bonnie wouldn't want a new mum and dad, even if it did mean going somewhere where it was always Christmas. Ida thought about how lovely Christmas used to be. Nice food, decorations, presents, staying up late. Bonnie wouldn't, would she?